The humble young woman admired the expensive ring she would never have. The millionaire hidden couldn't take his eyes off her. Unknowingly, she had already stolen his heart. And in that moment, the ring and her destiny changed forever. If this story captured your interest, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. We'll continue. Rebecca adjusted her name tag on her simple uniform and observed her reflection in the window of the small jewelry store where she worked. Her brown eyes sparkled with the same intensity as the pieces she organized daily on the shelves of the store in the commercial district of Chicago. At 25 years old, she carried with her not only dreams, but also a deep knowledge of jewelry acquired through endless nights poring over books and online tutorials. Thursday had arrived, her only day off during the week. As in a sacred ritual, Rebecca crossed the busy downtown streets toward Michigan Avenue, where the most luxurious window displays in the city exhibited treasures that for many were merely objects of desire, but for her were true works of art. That told stories. She stopped in front of Maison Aurora, the most prestigious jewelry store in the country, her eyes immediately fixed on the ring that for months had become her daily source of inspiration. The Dawn, as it was called, featured a rare red sapphire set in rose gold, with small diamonds forming a delicate spiral around the main stone. The price? More than she could save in 3 years of hard work. While admiring the piece, her fingers instinctively touched the simple ring she always wore on her right ring finger, an inheritance from her grandmother Eleanor, the only family she had left. The contrast between the two jewels couldn't be greater, but for Rebecca, both carried the same inexplicable sentimental value. In the window, her reflection merged with the sparkle of the jewels, creating an ethereal image that seemed to blend her two worlds, the real one where she was just a sales assistant, and the dreamed one where she created pieces that touched people's souls. She took her sketchbook from her bag, already worn from constant use, and began to sketch the details of the dawn once more, adding her own interpretations and variations. What Rebecca didn't notice was that from the second floor of Maison Aurora, through the mirrored windows, a man was observing her with growing fascination. Ethan Mitchell, the billionaire owner of the jewelry store, was intrigued by this young woman who week after week spent hours contemplating not just the ring, but the entire story it carried. The Dawn wasn't just another piece in his vast collection. Ethan had designed it personally in tribute to his mother, Catherine, a woman who started by selling costume jewelry at fairs and transformed that small business into the largest jewelry chain in the country. The red stone symbolized the strength and determination that his mother had always shown, even in the most difficult moments. At the end of that afternoon, when Rebecca finally put away her sketchbook and prepared to leave, something about her awakened in Ethan a curiosity he hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't just the way she admired the ring, but the way her eyes sparkled when she drew, as if each stroke were a silent prayer. Making a sudden decision, Ethan picked up his phone and made a quick call. He needed to know more about this mysterious young woman who seemed to understand so deeply the essence of his most personal creation. As he descended the stairs toward his private office, his mind was already mapping out a plan to get to know her better, without revealing his true identity. On the sidewalk, Rebecca took one last look at the dawn, not imagining that that Thursday would mark the beginning of a story that would completely change her life. She adjusted her bag on her shoulder and walked toward the bus stop, her thoughts still lost in the details of the jewel that fascinated her so much. The next morning, the small jewelry store where Rebecca worked was particularly quiet. She was taking advantage of the lull to organize the display case when the bell on the door announced the arrival of a customer. A tall man, wearing casual but clearly designer clothes, entered the store. His eyes scanned the environment with curiosity before settling on her. "Good morning, can I help you?" Rebecca asked with her usual smile, although something about the man seemed strangely familiar. "Actually, yes, you can," he replied, approaching the counter. "I'm looking for a special gift for my mother, something that tells a story, you know?" Those words touched Rebecca in a special way. It was exactly how she viewed jewelry, as narratives eternalized in metal and precious stones. For a few moments, She completely forgot her natural shyness and began to share her knowledge. "Each piece of jewelry has its own story," she began, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. "For example, this one." Rebecca pointed to a delicate silver brooch with small pearls. Pearls symbolize wisdom and protection. In ancient Rome, they were believed to be tears of the gods. Ethan, still maintaining his disguise, watched fascinated as the young woman transformed a simple sale into a lesson on history and symbolism. It wasn't just technical knowledge, there was passion in every word, every gesture. "You seem to know a lot about jewelry," he commented, genuinely impressed. Rebecca blushed slightly. "It's something I study on my own. I've always believed that jewelry is more than accessories. They're pieces of history that we carry with us." As they talked, Sarah, the manager of Maison Aurora, passed by the store window. Her sharp gaze immediately caught Ethan's presence, and an expression of displeasure crossed her face. She knew her boss very well, even if he was trying to go unnoticed. Inside the store, the conversation flowed naturally. Ethan asked several questions about different pieces, impressed with Rebecca's technical knowledge about cutting, types of settings, and the history behind each jewelry style. "You know," he said after almost an hour of conversation, "I'd love to continue this discussion about jewelry. How about we grab a coffee?" Rebecca hesitated. As interesting as the man was, years of taking care of herself had taught her to be cautious. "I'm sorry, but I don't usually go out with customers," she replied politely. Ethan smiled, respecting her professional stance. "How about we meet at the Artisan Fair in Grant Park on Sunday? It's a public place full of people, and I'm sure you'll enjoy seeing some interesting handcrafted pieces there." The proposal was tempting. The fair was one of her favorite places in the city, and she had really enjoyed the conversation with this mysterious man who seemed to share her passion for jewelry. "All right," she finally agreed, "but on one condition. We meet there in public at 2 in the afternoon. "Deal," he replied, satisfied. Before leaving, he bought the pearl brooch, leaving Rebecca intrigued by this unexpected encounter. What she didn't know was that, from across the street, Sarah was observing everything with a mixture of curiosity and concern. As the manager of Maison Aurora for years, she had hopes of someday assuming a position in the company's board. Seeing her boss interested in a simple saleswoman from an ordinary store wasn't part of her plans. Meanwhile, Ethan returned to his office at Maison Aurora, more convinced than ever that there was something special about this young woman. Her understanding of the sentimental value of jewelry, far beyond the commercial aspect, reminded him of his mother and the principles that had built his empire. Sunday arrived with a mild sun and a gentle breeze typical of Chicago's autumn. Rebecca arrived at Grant Park a few minutes before the agreed time, her heart beating a little faster than normal. She wore a simple floral dress and carried her inseparable bag with her sketchbook. The craft fair was busy, with several stalls displaying works in different materials. The aroma of coffee and popcorn mingled in the air, creating a welcoming atmosphere. Rebecca was walking among the booths, her attentive eyes capturing every detail of the handcrafted pieces, when she felt a familiar presence beside her. "Do you like wood art too?" asked Ethan, appearing discreetly at her side, pointing to a delicately carved jewelry box she was observing. "Actually, I was admiring the technique," she replied, smiling. "Each artisan has their own signature, a unique way of transforming raw material into art. It's like jewelry. Each piece tells a different story." They walked together through the fair, stopping at various stalls. Rebecca was surprised by Ethan's knowledge of different craft techniques. He seemed genuinely interested in her opinion on each piece they saw, especially when they reached the handcrafted jewelry section. "This ring you always wear," he commented, noticing the old piece on Rebecca's finger, "seems to have an interesting story." Rebecca touched the ring affectionately. "It was my grandmother Eleanor's. She raised me after I lost my parents. This ring is more than jewelry. It's a piece of my history, a reminder that we should always move forward, no matter the obstacles." Ethan observed the ring carefully, his eyes widening slightly as he noticed certain details in the design. There was something familiar about that piece, something that awakened a distant memory, but he kept this observation to himself. They stopped for coffee, and the conversation naturally flowed to their personal lives. Rebecca told him about her passion for jewelry design, how she studied on her own during her spare time, and dreamed of one day creating pieces that touched people's hearts. "You know, every Thursday I visit a jewelry store on Michigan Avenue," she confessed, blushing slightly. "There's a ring there called the Dawn that to me is the perfect embodiment of what jewelry should be. It's not just about beauty or material value, there's something deeper in it." Ethan felt his heart race. This young woman understood exactly what he had tried to express when creating that piece. "And what do you see in it?" he asked, trying to keep his voice casual. "I see rebirth," she answered, her eyes shining. "The way the red stone is embraced by the diamonds reminds me of the sun rising after a dark night. It's as if it's saying there's always hope, always a new beginning." In that moment, Ethan had to contain his emotion. That was exactly the message he had tried to convey when creating the Dawn in memory of his mother. How did this young woman so clearly see the essence of his creation? As they talked, not far from there, Sarah was also strolling through the park. Upon spotting the two chatting animatedly at a cafe, her eyes narrowed. Discreetly, she took some photos with her cell phone. That information could be useful in the future. The sun was starting to set when Rebecca looked at her watch, surprised by how much time had passed. "I need to go," she said, standing up. "My grandmother is waiting for me for Sunday dinner." "Can I see you again?" asked Ethan, trying not to seem too eager. Rebecca hesitated for a moment, but something about this man made her feel safe. "There's a library downtown that has an incredible section on jewelry history. We could meet there next week." Ethan smiled, agreeing. As he watched her leave, he touched the pocket where he kept a small notebook with notes. He needed to investigate more about that old ring Rebecca wore. There was something about it that awakened memories of a special project of his mother's from many years ago. The next morning, the main office of Maison Aurora buzzed with the usual bustle of the beginning of the week. Sarah, impeccable in her grey suit, knocked on Ethan's office door with a folder of documents in hand. "Excuse me, Mr. Mitchell. I've brought the reports from the last quarter and some suggestions for the new collection," she said, her professional voice masking her curiosity about the events of the day before. Ethan barely looked up from the documents he was analyzing, old design files from the jewelry store dating back more than 2 decades. "Thank you, Sarah. You can leave them on the desk." Before leaving, she hesitated for a moment. "Mr. Mitchell, as general manager, I believe I should mention something that concerns me. I've noticed some suspicious people observing our windows, especially on Thursdays." Ethan finally looked up, his expression serious. "I appreciate your concern, Sarah, but I assure you everything is under control. Please focus on preparing for the spring collection launch." After Sarah left, Ethan returned his attention to the old files. After hours of searching, he found what he was looking for. The original project for a special collection created by his mother, designed to celebrate stories of overcoming adversity. Among the drawings was a ring very similar to the one Rebecca wore. Meanwhile, in the small jewelry store, Rebecca was attending to customers with her usual enthusiasm, but her mind wandered to the moments shared with Ethan on Sunday. There was something about him that intrigued her, a deep knowledge about jewelry that seemed to go beyond the interest of a simple admirer. During her lunch break, she took out her sketchbook and began working on a new project inspired by the conversations of the previous day. Her soft strokes gave shape to a piece that combined classic elements with contemporary touches. "That's an interesting drawing," commented her co-worker Julia, peeking over her shoulder. "It looks like something that could be in the window of Maison Aurora." Rebecca smiled, blushing slightly. "It's just a sketch, but who knows one day." Late that afternoon, Ethan decided to make a discreet visit to the residence of a former employee of the jewelry store who had worked directly with his mother. Ms. Christina, now retired, received him with surprise and affection in her small apartment. "Catherine always said that jewelry wasn't just for adorning, but for telling stories," recalled Ms. Christina, her eyes shining with memories. That special collection she created, each piece thinking of real stories of customers who inspired her. "And do you remember who this specific ring was sold to?" asked Ethan, showing the design he had found. Ms. Christina adjusted her glasses, examining the project carefully. Ah, yes. It was for a young teacher. Very kind. She had lost everything in an accident, but kept a smile on her face. Her name was Maria Eleanor, if I'm not mistaken. Ethan's heart raced. Eleanor, the same name as Rebecca's grandmother. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fit together, revealing a connection that spanned generations. That night, in his luxurious apartment overlooking the city, Ethan contemplated the lights of Chicago while absent-mindedly twirling a glass of wine. Fate seemed to have woven an elaborate plot, intertwining his story with Rebecca's in a way he could never have imagined. His phone vibrated with a message from Sarah. Updated security report on your desk. I suggest we reevaluate the surveillance protocols for the main pieces, especially the Dawn. Ethan ignored the message. His thoughts were focused on the meeting scheduled with Rebecca at the library. There was so much he wanted to tell her, but something made him hesitate. How would he reveal his true identity without breaking the trust that was beginning to establish between them? On the other side of the city, in a simple but cozy house, Rebecca showed her new designs to grandmother Eleanor, who admired them with pride. The ring on her finger shone softly under the lamplight, holding secrets that would soon come to light. The central library was practically empty that Tuesday afternoon. Rebecca walked through the shelves of the applied arts section, her fingers sliding gently over the spines of old books about jewelry. The characteristic aroma of paper and wood created a welcoming atmosphere that made her feel at home. Ethan was already waiting for her at a discreet table, surrounded by volumes on the history of great jewelry houses. When he saw her, his face lit up with a genuine smile. I found something I think you'll be interested in, he whispered, pulling out a particularly old book. It was a catalogue of the largest Brazilian jewelry houses from the 1980s, including the first creations of Maison, Aurora. Rebecca leaned over the yellowed pages with fascination, admiring the classic designs that had established the standards of national jewelry. Look at this collection, Ethan pointed, carefully turning some pages. It was created by Catherine Mitchell, the founder of Maison Aurora. She started by selling costume jewelry at a fair, very similar to the one we visited on Sunday. Rebecca examined the photos with redoubled attention. There was something familiar about those designs, something that touched a distant memory. It's amazing how she managed to combine elegance with meaning. Each piece seems to tell a story. And what story do you see in these pieces? Asked Ethan, carefully observing her reaction. Rebecca took out her sketchbook and began to make some sketches while talking. I see a progression, as if each piece represented a step on a staircase, starting with simpler designs but full of soul until reaching more sophisticated creations without ever losing the original essence. Ethan felt his heart race. That was exactly how his mother described her creative process. How did this young woman capture with such precision the philosophy behind those creations? As they talked, Sarah discreetly passed through the library's periodicals section. It was no coincidence she had followed Ethan from the jewelry store. Hidden behind a bookshelf, she observed the interaction between the two with growing concern. No, continued Rebecca. My grandmother always told me stories about a jeweler who inspired her greatly, a woman who started from scratch and built an empire without losing her humanity. She said that story taught me that dreams have no expiration date. Ethan swallowed hard, struggling to maintain his composure. Every word from Rebecca brought him closer to the certainty that their destinies were intertwined in a way that surpassed mere coincidence. Your grandmother seems to be a very wise woman, he commented, his voice slightly hoarse with contained emotion. She's my safe haven, replied Rebecca, unconsciously touching the ring on her finger. After I lost my parents, she taught me that family isn't just about blood ties, but about the stories we share. The afternoon wore on as they immersed themselves in discussions about jewelry techniques, sharing knowledge and dreams. Ethan became increasingly impressed with the depth of Rebecca's self-taught knowledge, while she was surprised by the way he seemed to perfectly understand her most complex ideas. At one point, Rebecca began to draw a variation of the dawn, adding elements that symbolized renewal and hope. Ethan watched, fascinated, as she transformed his own creation into something even more meaningful. "It's amazing how you can see beyond the surface," he commented, admiring the drawing. "Most people only see the material value of jewelry, but you see their soul." Rebecca blushed at the compliment. "It's because every piece of jewelry has a story to tell. Like my grandmother's ring, it may look simple, but it carries decades of memories and love." From her observation post, Sarah discreetly photographed the interaction between the two. In her mind, she was already formulating a plan to use that information. If there was anything that threatened her position in the company, she needed to be prepared. When the library began to announce its closing time, Rebecca and Ethan reluctantly began to put away the books. "Can we meet again?" he asked, helping her organize her materials. "There's a contemporary art exhibition next Saturday," suggested Rebecca. "I heard there's a section dedicated to handcrafted jewelry." "That would be perfect," replied Ethan, feeling his heart lighter than he had felt in a long time. He watched Rebecca leave, carrying her books and dreams, not knowing that each meeting brought them closer to a revelation that would change their lives forever. The next morning, Sarah entered Ethan's office carrying a red folder. Her face maintained the usual professional expression, but her eyes betrayed a calculated uneasiness. "Mr. Mitchell, we need to discuss some sensitive matters regarding store security," she began, placing the folder on the desk. "Especially regarding the Dawn." Ethan looked up from the documents he was analyzing. "Any specific problem, Sarah?" "I've noticed a worrying pattern," she replied, opening the folder to reveal the photos she had taken of Rebecca observing the window display. "This young woman appears every Thursday, spends hours studying our pieces, making notes." "And that's a problem?" questioned Ethan, keeping his voice neutral despite the growing irritation. "Considering that she works for a competing jewelry store and has frequent meetings with a mysterious man." Sarah slid the photos from the park and library onto the desk. "I believe we should consider the possibility of industrial espionage." Ethan felt his blood boil, but maintained his composure. "Sarah, I appreciate your concern for the company's security. However, I suggest you focus your energies on the new collection launch." "But sir, that will be all, Sarah. You may leave." After she left, Ethan sank into his chair, running his hands over his face. The situation was getting complicated. He needed to tell Rebecca the truth before Sarah's manipulations created an irreparable misunderstanding. Meanwhile, at the small jewelry store, Rebecca received an unexpected visit. Sarah, wearing an elegant outfit and sporting an artificial smile, entered the store. "Can I help you?" asked Rebecca, vaguely recognizing her from Maison Aurora. "Actually, I came to help you," replied Sarah, her tone falsely sweet. "You know, I've noticed your interest in our jewelry store, and also your meetings with a certain customer." Rebecca felt her face heat up. "I don't understand what you're talking about." "Oh dear," Sarah laughed softly. "Of course you do. I just thought you should know who you're dealing with. That man, he's not who you think." Rebecca remained firm, although her heart was beating rapidly. "I'm sorry, but I don't feel comfortable discussing my personal life." Sarah shrugged, heading to the door. "As you wish, but when everything falls apart, remember that I tried to warn you." Before leaving, she turned one last time. "By the way, beautiful ring. It looks familiar." That afternoon dragged on for Rebecca. Sarah's words echoed in her mind, planting seeds of doubt. Who really was this man who seemed to know so much about jewelry? Why would a manager from Maison Aurora care to warn her? In his office, Ethan finally made a decision. He picked up his phone and typed a message to Rebecca. "I need to tell you something important. Can we meet tonight?" Rebecca hesitated for a long time before responding. Her heart told her to trust this man who had awakened so many new feelings in her life, but her mind warned her to be careful. Finally, she replied, "Okay, but in a public place." Ethan suggested a cafe near the park where they usually met. As he put away his cell phone, his eyes fell on the original design of Eleanor's ring, now framed on his desk. It was time to reveal the whole truth, regardless of the consequences. The cafe chosen for the meeting was quiet that night. Rebecca arrived first, choosing a table near the window that offered a view of the illuminated park. Her hands nervously played with her grandmother's ring, a habit that intensified when she was anxious. The door chime tinkled softly, announcing Ethan's arrival. He looked different, his usual relaxed air replaced by a serious and thoughtful expression. Even before sitting down, Rebecca sensed that something important was about to happen. "Would you share a chamomile tea with me?" he asked, trying to ease the tension that hung in the air. "I prefer an espresso. I need to be wide awake for this." "Conversation," replied Rebecca, her tone revealing a mixture of apprehension and determination. After their orders arrived, a heavy silence settled between them. Ethan removed a folder from his briefcase, carefully placing it on the table. "Rebecca, first of all, I need you to know that every moment we spent together was genuine," he began, his voice laden with emotion. "But there's something you need to know about me." He opened the folder, revealing old documents from Maison Aurora. Among them, the original design of the ring Rebecca wore, her grandmother Eleanor's ring. "This ring," he continued, pointing to the jewelry on Rebecca's finger, "was created by my mother, Catherine Mitchell, more than 20 years ago. It was part of a special collection dedicated to stories of overcoming adversity." Rebecca felt the air escape from her lungs. Her hands trembled slightly as she touched the original design of her ring, recognizing every detail she had admired throughout her life. "Your mother," she whispered, understanding beginning to form in her eyes. "Catherine Mitchell, the founder of Maison Aurora?" Ethan nodded slowly. "I am Ethan Mitchell, current owner of Maison Aurora. The Dawn, that ring you admire every Thursday, was created by me in tribute to my mother." Rebecca stood up abruptly, her chair scraping the floor with a sharp noise. Memories of the past few days flooded her mind. The meetings, the conversations, about jewelry, the impressive knowledge he demonstrated. It all made sense now. "Why didn't you tell me before?" Her voice trembled with a mixture of hurt and confusion. "Because for the first time in years someone saw me as just Ethan," he replied, the sincerity evident in his voice. "Not as the heir to Maison Aurora, not as the billionaire from business, magazines, just as someone who shares the same passion as you for jewelry and their stories." Rebecca sat back down, her legs too weak to keep her standing. Her eyes landed on the documents spread across the table, stopping on an old photo showing a young Eleanor receiving her ring from the hands of Catherine Mitchell. "My grandmother," she murmured, touching the photograph with reverence. "She always said this ring represented a new beginning in her life, that it was a gift from someone who believed in her when she needed it most." "Catherine had that gift," said Ethan softly. "She saw beyond appearances, found beauty in the simplest stories. When I first saw you, admiring the dawn, it was like seeing my mother again, that same look of someone who sees the soul of the jewelry." Silent tears streamed down Rebecca's face as she absorbed all those revelations. Her world, which already seemed magical in recent weeks, now spun at a dizzying speed. "Sarah came to warn me about you today," she said finally, wiping away the tears. "I think I understand why now." "Sarah is—" Ethan began, but Rebecca interrupted. "Him? Please," she raised her hand. "I need time to process all this. It's too much." She stood up again, this time with more firmness. Before leaving, she looked at Ethan one last time, her eyes conveying a complex mixture of emotions. "Thank you for telling me the truth," she said softly, "but I need to be alone now." Ethan watched, helpless, as she walked away, taking with her the ring that represented such a deep connection between their stories. In the sky, dark clouds were beginning to form, promising a night of storms in Chicago. The rain was falling, hard over Chicago when Rebecca arrived home. Eleanor was sitting in her favorite armchair, knitting by the light of the lamp. Upon seeing her granddaughter's emotional state, she immediately put down her handwork. "What happened, my flower?" she asked sweetly, opening her arms to welcome Rebecca. Rebecca nestled in her grandmother's lap, as she did when she was a child. Between sobs, She told everything about Ethan, Maison Aurora, and the history of the ring she had carried for so many years. "Ah, Catherine Mitchell," sighed Eleanor, a nostalgic smile on her lips. "She changed my life, you know. At the time, I had lost everything, my job, my savings. I was desperate, not knowing how to raise your mother alone." Rebecca straightened up, wiping away tears. "Why did you never tell me the ring came from Maison Aurora?" "Because some stories need to be discovered at the right time," replied Eleanor, adjusting a strand of her granddaughter's hair. "Catherine didn't just give me this ring. She gave me a job at the jewelry store, helped me start over. She always said that jewelry wasn't about flaunting wealth, but about carrying memories and hopes." In the Maison Aurora office, Ethan spent the night reviewing old files. He found records of when Eleanor worked at the company, photos of gatherings where his mother and Rebecca's grandmother appeared together, smiling. It was as if fate had woven an elaborate plot to unite their lives. Sarah was also in her office working late. Seeing the light still on in Ethan's room, a malicious smile formed on her lips. She picked up her phone and began composing an email to the company's board of directors. Back at Eleanor's house, Rebecca was discovering more about the past. Her grandmother had kept newspaper clippings, old photos, and even a Christmas card signed by Catherine Mitchell. "Look," said Eleanor, removing an old box from the closet. "Catherine gave me this on the day I retired." Inside was a delicate brooch with a yellowed note. "For Eleanor, who taught me that true jewels are made of stories and courage." Rebecca held the brooch carefully, noticing subtle similarities with the design of the dawn. "It's amazing how everything connects," she murmured. "The world has these things, my flower," smiled Eleanor. "Sometimes we need to take a step back to see the complete picture." The next morning, Ethan found on his desk a brown envelope with no identification. Inside were photos of him with Rebecca in the library, in the park, at the cafe. Along with them, a typed note. "The board will be interested to know how the heir to Maison Aurora spends his free time." He crumpled the note angrily, recognizing Sarah's blackmail attempt. But something else caught his attention. Among the photos was an old one that clearly didn't belong to the set. It showed his mother, Catherine, embracing a young Eleanor, both smiling in front of the first Maison Aurora store. At that moment, Ethan made a decision. He would not allow Sarah's manipulations to destroy something as special as the connection he had discovered with Rebecca. It was time to honor his mother's true legacy, not just as a businesswoman, but as someone who believed in the power of the stories behind each jewel. The sun had barely risen when Rebecca arrived at the small jewelry store where she worked. She needed the tranquility of the early morning hours to organize her thoughts. As she arranged the display case, her gaze fell upon a set of simple rings she had helped design months ago. "You're early today," commented Julia, her co-worker, entering the store. "Did something happen?" Rebecca hesitated for a moment before answering. Sometimes life surprises us with coincidences so extraordinary they seem like a soap opera plot. Before she could elaborate, the store phone rang. It was the owner, Mr. Robert, asking to speak with Rebecca urgently. With her heart racing, she took the call in her small office at the back of the store. "Rebecca, I received an interesting call from Maison Aurora," he began, his voice conveying a mixture of surprise and pride. "They're interested in establishing a partnership with us, and specifically mentioned your name." The world seemed to spin for a moment. "What do you mean, Mr. Robert?" "Apparently, they want to create a line of more accessible jewelry, maintaining the quality and elegance of the brand, and they want you leading the creative project." Rebecca sat down, her legs trembling. It was an incredible opportunity, but the timing couldn't be more complicated. Was Ethan behind this? Meanwhile, at Maison Aurora, Ethan was facing a tense meeting with the board of directors. Sarah was present, her artificial smile barely hiding her satisfaction as the photos she had taken were passed among the board members. "Mr. Mitchell," began the chairman of the board, "we understand your vision to modernize the company, but fraternizing with employees of competitors raises serious questions." Ethan remained calm, taking a set of drawings from his folder. "Gentlemen, I'd like to present something that could change the future of Maison Aurora." The drawings created by Rebecca during their meetings merged the classic elegance of the brand with contemporary and accessible elements. Along with them, Ethan presented a complete market study showing the untapped potential of a more democratic line. "This isn't just about expanding our business," he explained, his voice firm. "It's about honoring the true legacy of Catherine Mitchell, who started by selling simple but meaningful jewelry at a fair." The board was silent, examining the documents with growing interest. Sarah, realizing that her plan was beginning to crumble, tried one last card. "What about the security of our exclusive pieces? The Dawn, for example, has been the object of constant observation by this designer." Ethan smiled, pulling another document from his folder. "The Dawn was created by me in tribute to my mother, and now I propose to create a new, more accessible version of it as the centerpiece of this new collection, a bridge between our past and future." On the other side of the city, Rebecca was having lunch with her grandmother Eleanor at a small restaurant near the store. She shared the news of Maison Aurora's proposal, her doubts and fears. "You know, my flower," said Eleanor, holding her granddaughter's hands. "Catherine always said that the best jewels are those that make us grow. Perhaps this is your chance to create something truly special." Rebecca touched the ring on her finger, that precious gift that now carried even more meaning. "But what if it's just out of pity, or worse, a form of compensation?" "Ethan may be many things, but he doesn't seem the type of man who would do that," Eleanor replied wisely. "Besides, you earned this opportunity with your own talent. I saw how your eyes sparkled every time you created a new design, how dedicated you were to studying every detail of the art of jewelry making." That afternoon, Rebecca received a message from Ethan. "It's not compensation, it's recognition of your talent. The decision is yours, no pressure, but please don't let my mistakes keep you from shining." Looking through the store window, Rebecca observed the movement. On the street, people passing by hurriedly, each carrying their own stories. She took her sketchbook and began to sketch something new, a piece that represented transformation and courage. Maison Aurora was especially busy that morning. An atmosphere of expectation hung in the air as Rebecca crossed the elegant lobby. For the first time as an official guest, her heart was racing, a mixture of nervousness and excitement making her hands tremble slightly. In the meeting room on the top floor, Ethan awaited her along with a small team of designers and executives. Sarah was present, her face a mask of professionalism that barely disguised her dissatisfaction. "Welcome to Maison Aurora, Rebecca," said Ethan formally, maintaining a respectful distance. "We've prepared a presentation about the project we'd like to develop with you." The presentation revealed an ambitious vision, a line of jewelry called Precious Stories, inspired by the humble origins of the company and the emotional connections that people develop with their jewelry. The target audience would be ordinary people who, like Rebecca, dreamed of owning meaningful pieces without compromising their savings. "We want you to lead the creative process," explained Ethan. "Your sensitivity to capture stories and transform them into unique designs is exactly what we need." Rebecca opened her sketchbook, revealing the project she had worked on the night before. "Perhaps we could start with something like this," she suggested timidly. The design showed a collection of interconnected rings, each representing a different phase of life. The concept was simple but profound. People could start with a basic piece and add elements over time, building their own story. The room fell silent as everyone examined the drawings. Sarah was the first to speak, her tone calculatedly polite. "It's an interesting idea, but don't you think it's a bit basic for Maison Aurora standards?" "On the contrary," interrupted a voice from the door. It was Miss Christina, the former employee who had worked with Catherine Mitchell. Ethan had specially invited her to that meeting. "This reminds me exactly of how Catherine started. She believed that each person deserved to carry a piece of beauty with them." Ms. Christina approached the table, picking up one of Rebecca's drawings. "I see the same soul in your designs, dear. The same understanding that jewelry isn't about ostentation, but about moments and memories." Sarah stood up abruptly. "Excuse me, I have other commitments." She left the room without looking back, her heels echoing down the corridor. "Don't mind her," whispered one of the designers to Rebecca. "Sarah is just worried about losing her prominent position." Ethan took the opportunity to make an announcement. "I'd like to propose something special for the launch of this collection. Let's create a new version of the Dawn, more accessible, but maintaining its essence of hope and renewal." Rebecca felt her eyes fill with tears. That ring, which for so long she had admired through the glass, could now become reality for other people who, like her, dreamed of its beauty and meaning. "And I'd like you to lead this specific project," added Ethan, his eyes meeting hers with sincerity. At that moment, Rebecca understood that she was standing at a crossroads in her life. It wasn't just about creating jewelry. It was about honoring a story that began long before her, with her grandmother Eleanor and Catherine Mitchell, and extended into a future full of possibilities. Outside the room, Sarah was furiously typing, on her cell phone, planning her next move. If she couldn't stop that project, she would find a way to ensure it wasn't successful. Little did she know that her actions would soon return to haunt her in a way she would never expect. The design studio at Maison Aurora was a spacious and bright area, with large windows offering a privileged view of the city. Rebecca now had her own desk there, filled with drawings, stone samples, and small wax prototypes. 2 weeks had passed since her hiring, and each day brought new challenges and discoveries. "What do you think of this finish?" asked Jennifer, one of the most experienced designers on the team, showing a ring with a matte texture. It could work for the basic line of the collection. Rebecca examined the piece carefully. "It's beautiful, but I think we can create something more special while maintaining simplicity." She took her sketchbook and started making a quick sketch. "What if we combined this texture with small polished details? It would create an interesting contrast without increasing the cost too much." From Seoul, across the studio, Sarah observed the interaction with critical eyes. Since Rebecca had started working there, the young designer had quickly earned the respect and admiration of the team. This wasn't part of her plans. "Rebecca," called Sarah, her voice artificially sweet, "I need the preliminary budgets for the new collection to present to the board tomorrow. Can you prepare that by the end of the day?" "But Sarah," Jennifer intervened, "the budgets weren't scheduled until next week. We're still in the creative phase." "Plans change," Sarah replied dryly. "The board wants to see concrete numbers." Rebecca took a deep breath. "It's no problem, Jennifer. I can work on that today." When Sarah walked away, Jennifer approached Rebecca. "She's trying to overwhelm you. You don't have to accept everything she asks." "I know," smiled Rebecca, "but I won't let that distract me from what's really important." That afternoon, Ethan made a surprise visit to the studio. His eyes lit up when he saw Rebecca's desk covered with drawings and prototypes. "How's the new Dawn project going?" he asked, maintaining a professional tone despite the sparkle in his eyes. Rebecca picked up a small blue velvet case. Inside, a silver prototype showed a simplified but equally enchanting version of the original ring. The red stone had been replaced with an exceptional quality garnet, more affordable than the original sapphire, but still stunning. "It's perfect," murmured Ethan, examining every detail. "You've kept all the essence of the original." "I used different setting techniques to reduce labor costs," explained Rebecca, "and redesigned the structure to optimize metal use. But I kept all the symbolic elements, the rising sun, the idea of rebirth." Sarah, who was passing through the studio at that moment, stopped when she saw the intimate conversation between the two. An idea began to form in her mind. Later, when most employees had already left, Sarah sneaked over to Rebecca's desk. Among the various papers, she found the technical drawings of the new Dawn. With a malicious smile, she photographed every detail with her cell phone. The next morning, Rebecca arrived early at the studio, eager to continue her work. On her desk, she found a brown envelope with no identification. Inside were old photos of Maison Aurora, including one that caught her attention. Catherine Mitchell in front of the first store, wearing a brooch very similar to one of the designs Rebecca had created for the new collection. Confused, Rebecca examined her drawings and then the photo again. The similarity was undeniable. Her heart raced. Could it be possible that unconsciously she had copied an old design? In her office, Sarah was typing an email to an important fashion blog. Anonymous source reveals new Maison Aurora designer accused of plagiarism. Evidence shows copies of historic brand designs. What Sarah didn't know was that each piece of the puzzle she was assembling would end up revealing a truth very different from what she expected. In the old photo, hidden in a corner, was a detail that no one had yet noticed. A detail that connected the past to the present in a way that would change everything. The news about the alleged plagiarism accusation spread quickly through the corridors of Maison Aurora. Rebecca, sitting at her desk in the studio, tried to maintain her composure as she read the comments on social media. Her phone wouldn't stop vibrating with messages of support from her grandmother Eleanor and former colleagues. "Don't let this shake you," said Jennifer, placing a cup of tea on Rebecca's desk. "Everyone here knows your work, your creativity." Rebecca picked up the old photo again, studying every detail. The brooch that Catherine Mitchell wore had similar elements to her design, but there was something more. In the same photo, partially visible in a display window, was an open sketchbook. "Jennifer," called Rebecca, her voice trembling with excitement, "do you know if Mrs. Catherine's old files still exist? Her sketchbooks?" "They must be in the dead files in the basement," replied Jennifer. "But you need special authorization to access them." At that moment, Ethan entered the studio, his face tense. "Rebecca, can we talk in private?" In Ethan's office, Rebecca showed the photo and shared her theory. "It's not plagiarism, Ethan. It's connection. Look at the sketchbook in the window. They're the same elements your mother used, but reinterpreted in a completely new way." Ethan examined the photo carefully. "Wait a moment," he said, heading to a safe built into the wall. From inside, he removed an old worn sketchbook. "This was my mother's sketchbook. I've never shown it to anyone, but I think it's time." Together, they flipped through the yellowed pages. Catherine's drawings revealed an impressive, artistic evolution, from her first sketches at craft fairs to the sophisticated creations of Maison Aurora. And there, on the last pages, was something extraordinary. "That's," Rebecca whispered, hardly able to believe it. "An unrealized project," completed Ethan. "My mother called it Heritage, a collection that would combine classic elements with contemporary designs, creating bridges between different generations of artists." At that moment, Ms. Christina entered the office carrying an old box. "Excuse the intrusion, but when I heard what was happening, I remembered something Catherine asked me to keep." Inside the box were letters, photos, and an especially interesting document, a manifesto written by Catherine about the future of jewelry making. In it, she expressed her desire to see Maison Aurora create a line that would make beauty accessible to all, without losing quality and meaning. "Your mother would be the first to defend Rebecca," said Miss Christina to Ethan. "She always said that true artists don't copy. They are inspired, they evolve, they transform." Rebecca took her own sketchbook, placing it beside Catherine's. The similarities were undeniable, but not because of plagiarism. It was as if their creative souls were connected across time, sharing the same vision about the beauty and meaning of jewelry. In her office, Sarah received an unexpected call. The fashion blog wanted more evidence before publishing the story. Her hands trembled as she realized that her plan could backfire against her. What none of them knew was that this discovery wasn't just about clearing Rebecca's name, it was the beginning of something much bigger. Catherine Mitchell's manifesto was about to inspire a transformation that no one could predict, starting with a small note in the sketchbook that said, "For the future, may our jewels be bridges, not barriers." A week after the discovery of Catherine's manifesto, Maison Aurora buzzed with a different energy. The document had been shared with the entire creative team, inspiring a wave of innovations and ideas. Rebecca, now installed in a larger space in the studio, led daily meetings where veteran and rookie designers shared visions and dreams. What Catherine proposed wasn't just a line of accessible jewelry, Rebecca explained to her team, pointing to a panel full of drawings. It was a revolution in the way we see jewelry. Each piece should tell a story, should grow with the wearer. Jennifer, who had become a great ally, added, "It's like that first design you showed, Rebecca. The rings that connect, that evolve over time. It's exactly what Catherine envisioned. In the room next door, Ethan was conducting a video conference with the board of directors. The screen showed attentive faces as he presented the projected numbers for the new collection. "Gentlemen, my mother's manifesto wasn't just a dream, it was a visionary business plan," he explained, his voice filled with conviction. "By democratizing access to our jewelry without compromising our essence, we can expand our market presence and, more importantly, honor the true purpose of Maison Aurora." Outside the meeting room, Sarah observed everything with a mixture of frustration and concern. Her attempt to discredit Rebecca had completely failed. Worse, it had further strengthened the young designer's position in the company. That afternoon, Rebecca received a special visit to the studio. Her grandmother Eleanor, elegant in a navy blue dress, arrived accompanied by Ms. Christina. "I brought something that might help with the project," said Eleanor, removing a small velvet box from her purse. Inside was a collection of yellowed newspaper clippings and a delicate brooch that no one had seen before. "This brooch," she explained, "was a gift from Catherine to all employees who completed 10 years at the company. Each received a different one, but they all followed the same principle. They could be transformed, adapted for different occasions." Rebecca carefully picked up the brooch, studying its ingenious mechanism. It was possible to separate the pieces and recombine them in different ways, creating various arrangements. "It's brilliant," she whispered, already imagining how she could incorporate that concept into the new collection. Ethan, who had finished his meeting, joined the group. Upon seeing the brooch, his eyes filled with recognition. "I remember seeing my mother designing these. She would spend entire nights in the workshop testing different mechanisms." "And do you know what she used to say?" added Ms. Christina, smiling. "That jewelry should be like people, capable of transforming, of adapting without losing their essence." As they talked, Rebecca noticed something curious in the oldest newspaper clipping. It was a report on the inauguration of the first Maison Aurora store, and it showed Catherine wearing a set of transformable jewelry. "Look at this," she said, pointing to the photo. "The necklace she's wearing. It looks like it can be separated into several parts." "That was the secret to the store's initial success," explained Eleanor. "Customers could buy a simple piece and add elements over time. It was like building your own story in jewelry." Ethan was silent for a moment, absorbing that information. Suddenly, he picked up his phone and made a quick call. "I need an extraordinary meeting with the board tomorrow," he said. "I think we've found our competitive edge." Rebecca observed the scene with a serene smile. In her hands, the transformable brooch seemed to pulse with possibilities. It was as if the past and future of Maison Aurora were meeting there, at that moment, ready to create something extraordinary. In the hallway, Sarah passed by hurriedly, carrying a folder full of documents. Her face was tense, worried. She had just received an email from the fashion blog. Not only would they not publish the story about the alleged plagiarism, but they were interested in doing an article about the revival of Catherine Mitchell's legacy through the new collection. The extraordinary board meeting was scheduled for 9 o'clock the next morning. Rebecca arrived early at the office, wanting to organize her presentation. To her surprise, she found Ms. Christina already in the studio, rummaging through old archive boxes. "Ah, good that you arrived early," smiled the lady. "There's something I need to show you before the meeting." From one of the boxes, Ms. Christina removed a yellowed envelope. "Catherine gave me this years ago, asking me to deliver it at the right time. I think that time has come." Inside the envelope was a letter and a small leather notebook. The letter, dated a few months before Catherine's passing, was addressed to the future of Maison Aurora. "Dear Ethan," the letter began, "if you're reading this, it means you finally found someone who shares our vision about the true meaning of jewelry. Someone who understands that beauty is not a privilege but a right. The notebook that accompanies this letter contains designs I never realized, dreams I leave for the next generation to fulfill." Rebecca leafed through the notebook with reverence. The designs were revolutionary even by current standards, modular, sustainable, adaptable pieces. On the last page, there was a post-it with an intriguing notation. "Look for Maria Eleanor, she understands." "My grandmother," whispered Rebecca, her voice trembling with emotion. At that moment, Ethan entered the studio. Upon seeing the letter in Rebecca's hands, he stopped abruptly. "What is that?" "A gift from your mother," Miss Christina replied softly. Catherine knew that one day Maison Aurora would need to reinvent itself. She left the seeds for that transformation. Ethan read the letter in silence, his eyes welling up. When he finished, he looked at Rebecca with a new understanding. She knew. Somehow she knew this would happen. The sound of heels in the corridor announced Sarah's arrival. She entered the studio carrying a red folder, but stopped when she saw the scene before her. "Mr. Mitchell," she began, her professional tone masking her nervousness. "Before the meeting, I need to confess something. It was I who tried to create the plagiarism story. I was afraid of losing my position in the company." To everyone's surprise, Ethan smiled. "Sarah, how long have you worked here?" 15 years. "You must remember what my mother always said about competition, that the only competitor that matters is yourself from the day before," replied Sarah, lowering her eyes. "Exactly. And you know what else?" Ethan picked up his mother's design notebook. "There's a project here that I think you would be perfect to lead. A line of corporate jewelry, elegant but accessible. It was one of my mother's dreams that never got off the drawing board." Sarah looked up, surprised. "Even after everything?" "I did?" "Catherine also believed in second chances," interjected Miss Christina, "and in teamwork." Rebecca approached Sarah, extending her hand. "What do you think about working together? Your experience with the corporate market would be invaluable for the project." Before Sarah could respond, the intercom announced that the board was waiting in the meeting room. It was time to present not just a new collection, but a new vision for the future of Maison Aurora. Ethan carefully tucked his mother's letter into his suit pocket. That yellowed paper had become more than a message from the past. It was a map to the future, a future that Catherine had envisioned long before any of them. The Maison Aurora meeting room had never seemed so imposing as on that morning. The board members, men and women in impeccable attire, took their places around the large mahogany table. The nervousness was palpable in the air, but Rebecca remained serene, her hands resting on the folder that contained not just drawings, but an entire dream. Ethan opened the meeting with an introduction that no one expected. Instead of starting with numbers and projections, he placed his mother's old notebook and the newly discovered letter on the table. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we present our new vision for Maison Aurora, I'd like to share something with you." His voice was laden with contained emotion as he read Catherine's words aloud. A respectful silence filled the room. Some of the older board members, who had known Catherine personally, discreetly removed their glasses to wipe their eyes. Rebecca then stood up, her heart pounding strongly, but her voice firm. "What we are presenting today is not just a new collection. It's the realization of a dream that began decades ago, with a woman who believed that beauty and meaning should be within everyone's reach." With a smooth gesture, she opened her digital presentation. On the screen appeared the image of Eleanor's transformable brooch, followed by a series of modern designs that clearly shared the same creative DNA. "The Living Heritage Collection is more than a set of jewelry," she continued. "It's a system of pieces that grow and evolve with their owners. Each element can be combined, transformed, passed on. It's the democratization of jewelry without losing the essence of luxury." Sarah, sitting discreetly in a corner of the room, watched admiringly as Rebecca presented the prototypes. Each piece told a story. Each detail had been thought out not just in terms of beauty, but of meaning and accessibility. "And the centerpiece of the collection," announced Rebecca, removing a small velvet box from her folder, "is this reinterpretation of the dawn." The ring she revealed caused audible gasps. It was clearly inspired by the iconic piece, but with a unique ingenuity. The central stone could be exchanged, allowing the owner to update the jewelry over time. "Imagine," she said, demonstrating how the mechanism worked, starting with a semi-precious stone and years later, when your life allows, replacing it with a sapphire or a diamond. The structure of the ring tells your story of personal growth. Ethan then took the floor again, presenting the numbers the board had been waiting for. The projections showed an impressive market potential, with a gradual expansion plan that would maintain the exclusivity of the brand while making it more accessible. The most interesting thing, he pointed out, is that this business model encourages a lasting relationship with our customers. We don't just sell a piece of jewelry, we sell a journey. One of the oldest board members, Mr. Parker, who had worked with Catherine for decades, cleared his throat before speaking. You know, young Rebecca, in all these years since Catherine left us, this is the first time I truly feel her spirit present in this room. From across the table, Sarah surprised everyone by speaking up. If I may, she said, standing, I'd like to present a compliment to this project. She opened her own folder, revealing a detailed study on the corporate market and its possibilities. The corporate line that Mr. Mitchell mentioned earlier, it fits perfectly with this vision. We can create pieces that symbolize professional growth, achievements, significant moments in one's career. Rebecca smiled, genuinely impressed with how quickly Sarah had embraced the idea and expanded its potential. It was as if Catherine's spirit had touched everyone in that room, reminding them of the true purpose of jewelry. The news of the project's unanimous approval by the board spread quickly through Maison Aurora. The design studio buzzed with renewed energy as the team worked on the final details for the launch of the Living Heritage collection. Rebecca was at her desk, finalizing the technical drawings of one of the pieces when Jennifer came running into the studio, waving a fashion magazine. Have you seen this? She asked, excited. The editorial about the revival of Catherine Mitchell's legacy. It's wonderful. The article spanned several pages of the magazine, with old photos of the first Maison Aurora store alongside images of the new prototypes. The headline read, Return to Origins, How Maison Aurora is Revolutionizing Jewelry Once Again. Ethan appeared in the studio shortly after, carrying an old box he had found in the archives. Look what I discovered, he said, placing the box on Rebecca's desk. Inside were dozens of letters from customers from Catherine's time, thanking her not just for the jewelry, but for the way she had made their dreams possible. One letter in particular caught everyone's attention. Dear Catherine, when I first entered your store, I had only enough to buy the simplest ring. You not only treated me like a VIP customer, but showed me how that small piece could grow with me. Today, 15 years later, my ring tells the story of my life. Each element added marks an achievement, a precious memory. Thank you for teaching me that luxury isn't about price, but about meaning. Sarah, who now worked harmoniously with the team, approached with her laptop. Look at the numbers for corporate pre-orders. Several companies have already shown interest in creating recognition programs using our modular pieces. Rebecca smiled, picking up her grandmother's ring. It's amazing how everything connects. Isn't it? This ring brought me here, and now we're going to create pieces that can do the same for other people. At that moment, Eleanor and Ms. Christina arrived at the studio bringing a surprise, an old photo album showing the evolution of the first Maison Aurora store. Catherine kept everything, explained Ms. Christina, turning the pages with affection. Every photo, every receipt, every drawing had a story. And now those stories will come to life again, added Ethan, his gaze meeting Rebecca's with a mixture of tenderness and admiration. A young intern from the marketing department entered the studio, carrying the first proofs of the new collection's catalog. The photos were stunning, models of different ages and styles, wearing the transformable pieces in various combinations. The most interesting thing, commented the intern, is that each person who sees the catalog has a different interpretation of the pieces. It's as if each one finds their own story in them. Sarah, who had become a surprisingly enthusiastic advocate for the project, added, and that's exactly what Catherine always wanted. Jewelry that was as unique as the people who wear them. The afternoon sun came through the large windows of the studio, making the prototype jewelry shine softly. Rebecca took her sketchbook, leafing through to the first page where she had sketched her version of the dawn. It was amazing how that simple drawing had transformed into something so much bigger, something that was about to change not just Maison Aurora, but the way people viewed and related to jewelry. There was just one day left until the grand launch of the Living Heritage collection. The main hall of Maison Aurora had been transformed into a space that blended the classic and the contemporary. Special display cases exhibited the evolution of the jewelry over time, showing how each piece could be transformed and personalized. Rebecca walked through the space, adjusting small details in the displays. In one of the central display cases, the new dawn shone next to the original, symbolizing the bridge between past and future. Her fingers unconsciously touched her grandmother's ring, as she always did in moments of reflection. "Everything is perfect," said a soft voice behind her. It was Eleanor, who had arrived early to see the final preparations. "Almost perfect," corrected Rebecca, smiling. "There's still one detail missing." She led her grandmother to a special display case covered with dark blue velvet. Upon removing the fabric, she revealed an exhibition dedicated to the history of Eleanor's ring, including the old photo with Catherine Mitchell. "Oh, my flower." Eleanor brought her hands to her face, moved. Catherine would be so proud to see this. On the other side of the hall, Sarah coordinated the lighting team. Her relationship with Rebecca had completely transformed in recent weeks. Working together, they discovered that their different perspectives complemented each other perfectly. "Rebecca," called Sarah, approaching with a tablet in her hands. "All the VIP invitations have been confirmed, including—" She hesitated, for a moment, smiling. "Several of the old customers from Catherine's time. Some still have their original pieces and want to wear them at the event." Ethan arrived at the hall at that moment, carrying an old wooden box. "I found something I need to show you," he said, gathering Rebecca, Eleanor, and Sarah around a nearby table. Inside the box was an unfinished necklace, along with notes and drawings. "This was the last project my mother started," he explained, his voice soft. "She never got to finish it." Rebecca examined the necklace carefully. It was an extraordinary piece. Even unfinished, it was possible to see the genius of the design. Each element could be separated and recombined in multiple ways. "This gives me an idea," she said, taking her sketchbook. Quickly, she began to sketch something new, a way to incorporate elements from that unfinished necklace into the design of the new collection. "What if we created a special piece for the launch?" she suggested, showing the drawing. "Something that combines Catherine's last design with our new vision. We could auction it and donate the value to a foundation supporting young designers." Ethan's eyes sparkled with the suggestion. It would be the perfect way to honor her legacy. While they discussed the details, Jennifer came running into the hall. "You need to see this," she exclaimed, pointing to her cell phone. On the screen, a series of photos showed people forming a line in front of Maison Aurora. "But the launch is tomorrow," said Sarah, confused. "Exactly," replied Jennifer, excited. They want to be the first to see the new collection. People are sharing stories on social media about old Maison Aurora jewelry that belonged to their mothers and grandmothers." Rebecca felt her heart warm. This was exactly what she had dreamed of. Jewelry that wasn't just beautiful objects, but carriers of stories, connecting generations. Late in the afternoon, when most of the team had already left, Rebecca remained in the hall, admiring the completed work. Ethan joined her, bringing 2 cups of coffee. "You know," he said, handing one of the cups to Rebecca, "since you started coming here on Thursdays to see the dawn, I always wondered what you saw in it that fascinated you so much." Rebecca smiled, her eyes meeting his. "I saw hope. I saw the possibility of turning dreams into reality, no matter where you come from. And now you're helping other people realize their dreams too," added Ethan, his gaze conveying much more than his words could express. Night was falling over Chicago when Rebecca finally finished the last adjustments to the special piece inspired by Catherine's unfinished necklace. Her skilled hands had worked for hours, combining elements of the original design with contemporary touches that reflected the new direction of Maison Aurora. "It's perfect," said Ethan, who had remained in the studio observing her work. "But there's something else I want to show you." He led her to his private office, a space that Rebecca had not yet seen. The walls were decorated with old photos of the jewelry store, and on a special shelf was the original Dawn, shining softly under a directed light. "During all those Thursdays," he began, his voice soft, "I watched you from my window. It wasn't just curiosity, there was something in your gaze, in the way you appreciated the piece, that reminded me so much of my mother." Rebecca blushed slightly, remembering those moments when she allowed herself to dream in front of the window display. "The dawn always represented something bigger for me. It wasn't just jewelry, it was a symbol that dreams can come true." Ethan smiled, approaching a small safe built into the wall. "You know, after we discovered the connection between our families, between your grandmother and my mother, I began thinking a lot about destiny." He opened the safe and removed a small blue velvet box. "This is a special prototype I created, different from all the others." When he opened the box, Rebecca felt her heart stop for a moment. It was a unique version of the new dawn, but with a crucial detail. The central stone had exactly the same shade of red as the original ring, and around it, small diamonds formed a pattern reminiscent of rays of the rising sun. "Rebecca," said Ethan, his voice trembling slightly, "this ring represents not just our professional history, but something much more personal. It's a promise, not of an ending, but of a beginning." He gently took her hand. "Since that first coffee, when you talked about the meaning of jewelry with such passion, I knew I had found someone special. Someone who didn't just see beauty in the pieces, but saw soul in them." Rebecca felt tears forming in her eyes. "Ethan, I'm not asking for an answer now," he continued. "In fact, I have another proposal first. I received an invitation to participate in an exchange program with a jewelry design school in Florence. It's 6 months of intensive studies with the best jewelry masters in Europe." Rebecca's eyes widened. "That's incredible, and I want you to go," he completed. "It's a unique opportunity to perfect your talent, to expand your horizons. Maison Aurora would sponsor your studies." "But what about the new collection? The project?" "Everything will continue here waiting for you. Sarah and the team can conduct the launch in the first few months. This ring," he indicated the box in his hands, "is a promise that no matter what path you choose, I'll be here. Whether as a mentor, friend, or—" He hesitated, smiling. "Something more." Rebecca looked at the ring, at Ethan, and then at the city that stretched beyond the office windows. Her mind went back to those Thursdays, when she would stand admiring the dawn through the glass, dreaming of possibilities that seemed so distant. "You're not just offering me a ring or a study opportunity," she said softly. "You're giving me wings to fly." Ethan smiled, his eyes shining with emotion. "Catherine always said that the best jewels are those that free us, not those that bind us." At that moment, with the night of Chicago as witness, Rebecca understood that some dreams are too big to be contained in a display case. Sometimes they need space to grow, just like the transformable jewelry they had created together. The day of the launch of the Living Heritage collection finally arrived. The main hall of Maison Aurora shone with a magical atmosphere. The display cases told a visual story that began with Catherine Mitchell's first creations and culminated in the new transformable pieces. Rebecca arrived early, wearing an elegant midnight blue dress, and, on her finger, her grandmother Eleanor's ring shone with an even more special meaning. The prototype Ethan had given her the night before rested on a delicate chain around her neck, a silent promise of the future. "Everything is simply perfect," said Eleanor, who had arrived with Ms. Christina. The two ladies seemed moved to see how Catherine's legacy had been honored in every detail of the exhibition. Sarah, impeccable in a silver suit, coordinated the final preparations with impressive efficiency. "The journalists will start arriving in 30 minutes, she informed, consulting her tablet, "and we already have a considerable line forming outside." As the sun set, the hall began to fill. Old customers of Maison Aurora mingled with young design enthusiasts, all eager to see the promised revolution in the jewelry world. Many of the older ladies wore pieces created by Catherine, creating a tangible connection between past and present. Ethan climbed onto the small stage set up in the center of the hall. His gaze met Rebecca's in the crowd before beginning his speech. Many years ago, my mother, Catherine Mitchell, started this company with a simple dream: to create jewelry that told stories, that grew with their owners, that were more than just accessories. Today, thanks to an extraordinary sequence of events and special people, we are renewing that dream. He gestured toward the display cases, where the new transformable pieces shone under the lights. The Living Heritage Collection is not just a set of jewelry. It's an invitation for each person to create their own story, piece by piece, moment by moment. Rebecca was called to the stage to demonstrate how the pieces worked. With skilled hands, she showed how a simple necklace could transform into a set of earrings and a brooch, how rings could be combined to tell different stories. "And now," announced Ethan, "I'd like to present something very special." The central display case was unveiled, revealing the necklace Rebecca had finished the night before, Catherine's last unfinished creation, now completed with a contemporary touch. A murmur of admiration ran through the hall. "This necklace will be auctioned tonight," he continued, "and all proceeds will go to the creation of a foundation that will offer scholarships to young jewelry designers." It was at this moment that Sarah took the stage, surprising everyone. "And I have the pleasure of announcing that the first recipient of this scholarship has already been chosen." She smiled at Rebecca. "Our talented creative director has been selected for a special study program in Florence." The announcement was received with enthusiastic applause. In the front row, Eleanor wiped away tears of happiness, while Ms. Christina held her hand in silent support. The doors of the jewelry store were opened to the public, and a wave of eager people began to enter. The most impressive thing wasn't just the interest in the jewelry, but the stories that each visitor shared, memories of old pieces, dreams of future collections. A young woman approached Rebecca, showing a small brooch that had belonged to her great-grandmother. "It was bought here at the first Maison Aurora store," she explained. "I've always dreamed of being able to create something like this myself." Rebecca smiled, recognizing in the young woman's eyes the same sparkle that she once had in her own. "Sometimes," she said softly, "dreams are just the beginning of a much bigger story." As the evening progressed, the success of the event became increasingly evident. The transformable pieces captivated everyone not just for their beauty, but for their accessibility and meaning. It was as if Catherine Mitchell had foreseen this moment, this natural evolution of her legacy. 6 months after the historic launch of the Living Heritage Collection, Rebecca was back in Chicago. The afternoon Italian sun still seemed to shine on her skin, and her eyes carried the glow of someone who had immersed deeply in new knowledge and experiences. Maison Aurora had transformed during her absence. The new collection was a resounding success, with waiting lists for the transformable pieces. Sarah had proven to be an exceptional leader, expanding the corporate line beyond the most optimistic expectations. "Welcome back," smiled Jennifer, embracing her friend in the jewelry store lobby. "We have so many new things to show you." The design studio was larger now, occupying the entire floor. Young designers worked at their desks, creating new interpretations of the evolving jewelry concept. In a special corner, a display case exhibited Eleanor's original ring alongside its complete story. "Your grandmother became a kind of celebrity while you were away," joked Sarah, who now directed the mentoring program for new talents. "She comes every week to tell stories about the early days of the jewelry store to our apprentices." Rebecca smiled, touching the ring Ethan had given her, now on her right ring finger. During her months in Florence, he had visited whenever he could, and their video calls were filled with discussions about design, dreams, and the future. "By the way," continued Sarah with a complicit smile, "there's someone waiting for you at the old Dawn display case." Rebecca made the familiar way to the display case where it all began. Ethan was there, exactly as on that first Thursday, when he secretly observed her. But now there were no secrets between them, only a future full of possibilities. "I thought we could take a walk," he said, extending his hand. "There's a craft fair happening in the park." As they walked under the late afternoon sun, Rebecca told about her studies in Florence, about the ancient techniques she had learned and the revolutionary ideas she had developed. Ethan listened attentively, his eyes shining with pride. And, "Love, you know," she said, stopping in front of a stall selling handcrafted costume jewelry, "this is where your mother started, isn't it? Selling simple but meaningful pieces." "And now the circle is complete," replied Ethan, observing a young artisan passionately explaining about her creations. Maison Aurora has returned to its roots without losing its essence. Back at the jewelry store, a surprise awaited Rebecca. In the center of the main hall, a new display case had been installed. Inside it, the necklace she had completed, Catherine's last unfinished design, now had a special plaque, dedicated to all the dreamers who, like Rebecca, have the courage to transform glass into diamonds, distance into possibility, and dreams into reality. Because the true jewels are those that tell our story. Rebecca felt tears of emotion forming in her eyes. Ethan embraced her from behind, whispering in her ear, "And our story is just beginning." In the jewelry store window, the setting sun cast golden reflections, creating a spectacle of light and shadows. Rebecca observed her reflection in the glass, remembering all the Thursdays she would stand there, dreaming. Now she understood that those moments weren't just about admiring